Let's bring in epidemiologist Raywat Deonandan from the University of Ottawa. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
What do you make of this idea that we're now in a third wave, that according to the Ontario Hospitals Association?
I think it's accurate. I think we are in a third wave. And I say so for a variety of reasons. One, the numbers are up and they're going up a little more every day. The wastewater analysis in places like Ottawa show that the objective measurements are climbing. And Europe saw its beginning of a third wave a couple of weeks ago, and we've been pretty much trailing what happens in Europe by a couple of weeks throughout the entire pandemic. So it's real, it's happening, and we need to buckle in and ride it out.
Also real, also happening right now. Various regions are starting to ease lockdown restrictions, if you will. What do you make of that? Would you see a scenario where perhaps big cities like Toronto would dial it back once again? Folks have waited so long under lockdown, but this is concerning, right? Dealing with this third wave now?
Yeah, it's a little concerning and confusing. Why do waves happen? They happen because people go back into society and socialize and drive the numbers up again. And this time around, that's happening in the context of new variants that are hypertransmissible. And they might be the mechanism of the height of the third wave. So I understand people's desire to socialize. We've been indoors for so long. We need to restrain ourselves a couple of months more. Then we have all the socialization we want when this last wave is taken care of and vaccination does its job. We're almost at the end. We just have to fight this last foe.
Okay, we're almost at the end. Of course, one of the tools in our pandemic toolkit for Canada is the AstraZeneca vaccine. Where would you, as an epidemiologist, where would you like to begin here? I'm sure we could talk about this particular angle all day, but we know some European countries are not happy with this vaccine. However, officials here, including NACI, now switching gears and saying, yes, we will recommend AstraZeneca for folks over the age of 65.
Well, first, let's talk about the safety, the clotting issues, right? So the reason it's been suspended in these countries is to give them time to investigate. They're not saying anything's wrong with it. They're saying, well, let's look at it. And these things happen. Correlation is not causation. The vaccine tends to be given to older, more fragile people. Guess what happens to older, more fragile people? A variety of medical consequences. Doesn't mean the vaccine caused it. If you look at the actual numbers, the proportion of people who got the clots divided by the number of people who got vaccines, you're looking at 0.0006% of the vaccine recipients. And the proportion of people who get clots, deep vein thrombosis in the general population is like 0.02%. So in fact, the vaccine population has fewer clots than the non-vaccinated population. So if it's probably not related, but if it is related, then it's a very, very small risk. Remember, tens of millions of people around the world have received this vaccine and nothing bad has happened to the overwhelming majority of them. So the risk is small. Now, the NACI recommendation that it's to be given to older people, I think is the right move. The reason it was slow to do so was that the clinical trials did not enroll enough older people to allow us to compute an efficacy score. Not because the efficacy was not high, just that weren't enough to actually make the calculation well enough. But real life data coming out of England shows that it is very, very effective amongst the older population.
It's just that headline, right? When you see it crossing your screen, when someone rejects a vaccine like this, given all the hypersensitivity around vaccinations, it can seem rather alarming. But you've got scores and scores of your colleagues, particularly here in Canada, saying, look, if you're lucky enough to get your hands on it, take it.
Absolutely. I would take it right away. I've not been vaccinated yet, and I would love to have the AstraZeneca vaccine for me and my family. It's a fine vaccine, and as I said, it's being used in many countries around the world to great effect, in India and in the UK, for example. Keep in mind, the batches we have in Canada are not from Europe. They're from India.
That's right.
If you're concerned about a potential quality control issue with the European batches, that doesn't affect us.
Okay, so to be clear on that, once again, the first shipment that we received, I understand we're getting more shipments from India, but this first shipment that we received, this is not the supply that folks are pointing fingers at. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, fascinating information. Raywat Deonandan, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.